Good afternoon, and welcome to today's Talent Forward conversation, the third in our 2021 event series, where we're digging into the most pressing workforce recovery discussions and bringing those into your homes and offices. As evidenced by the overwhelming response we heard from this session today, and from those of you that are joining us here today, there is perhaps no greater workforce-related topic of interest than the one we're here to talk about today, the worker shortage. With 9.5 million people unemployed and over 9 million open jobs, we're all trying to identify the incentives and remove the barriers that are keeping people from the workforce. Businesses of all sizes and sectors are struggling to open back up at full capacity while not able to bring workers back into their doors. Today's event aims to provide strategies and ideas for how companies and communities can leverage public and private solutions. We know that talent is the most critical component of an economic recovery, so how do we do it? There's certainly no silver bullet, but we're tackling it both at the Chamber and the Chamber Foundation through policy solutions, programmatic supports, research, and the list goes on. All of which can be found, I hope you'll go and check it out, Googling America Works and U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We know from the response and engagement we've seen through America Works that the employer community is eager to learn about solutions and to put them into place. And we're really hoping to surface some of those today. So let's get going. I'm joined first by Ann Miller, the Vice President of Talent Acquisition at Memorial Hermann Health System in Houston, Texas. Ann, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate your willingness.
Thanks, Cheryl. Happy to be here.
So let's just talk about the healthcare industry. Certainly an industry that was struggling, I think, to meet talent needs pre-pandemic. Which jobs are those sort of most difficult to fill? And do you have kind of a grasp on why that is? Why are they more challenging than others?
Yeah, it's you always hear nursing. So nursing is without a doubt. There's a shortage worldwide of nurses, and so it's something that we struggle with. But interestingly, a lot of other positions have become challenging, and positions that do not have a high need for high education. We have positions in the front end of our business that work with our patients and families on insurance and scheduling. They're called patient access reps. We're having a hard time finding those. We have a hard time finding patient care technicians who work closely with the nurses in taking care of patient care at the bedside. And we're having a hard time finding even surgical technicians and scrub techs. So there's a shortage across all areas in healthcare, it seems these days.
And post-COVID more so than pre, or is
Post-COVID
it just
more so? I think we've seen, a rise in turnover with COVID. I think you see a lot of healthcare workers also got really burned out, were afraid of bringing the illness to their families and overworked. And, it was just really a tough time. And I think people maybe reprioritized their life a little bit and decided I'm going to step away from healthcare. So that's certainly something that has created the need to hire more people. Plus just the demand has gone up, right? And now that we're seeing a resurgence again, it's just, to try and keep as many beds as we have open and to take care of the patients. But it definitely came back. I would say, post-COVID, we're definitely busier post-COVID than we were pre-COVID. Well, we were busy pre-COVID, but I think a lot of businesses are feeling it. It's just has gotten super busy. But I do think a lot of it is, we have seen an increase in turnover too.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the talent strategies that you guys employ. You talked a little bit about nursing is obviously a high demand area and one that we've had talent shortages for some years, but then you mentioned some of the positions, great jobs, maybe don't require as much education to fill. Talk about how you're approaching those and with what
Yeah.
types of strategies.
So we've done several things. So one thing we've done is we went through all of our positions to really look at what the minimum educational requirement is. And most of them required a high school diploma or a GED equivalency. And we have removed that from a number of jobs. And I think that is something you're seeing, again, in across industry starting to happen of, is that absolutely needed? Can we teach people skills and that don't have that level of education? And the answer is absolutely. So we've removed that from a number of jobs. We have started working very closely with organizations like the United Way to help train staff and identify and also identify what we call disadvantaged youth, ages typically 18 to like 24, 25, people who just haven't had a chance to really be exposed to any type of career options. In a lot of cases haven't finished high school, and exposing them a lot. If you don't come from a family where you had some healthcare, a healthcare worker in there, you really don't know what healthcare entails. And so educating the people about what options there are. And there's, like I said, there's a lot of options. Not everybody wants to be working next to a patient, and that's okay. We have jobs that are behind the scenes, administrative jobs. If you're technically inclined, cleaning surgical equipment is a great job, a great way to get your foot in the door. And then taking advantage of, say, some tuition reimbursement we have to go on and become a surgical technician. All of them offering very nice careers and a good wage for what those jobs require.
So I think that's really interesting. You talked about a couple things, sort of removing artificial barriers. I call them artificial. I mean, you've identified them as barriers that maybe weren't needed, partnering with maybe non-traditional training providers like a United Way, somebody who's not just, I guess the sort of traditional post-secondary education partner, maybe nonprofit partners. Are those some of your partners with disadvantaged youth? So focusing on particular populations. What makes them
so big? Yeah, I was going to say Houston's so big that there's plenty of areas to tap into. It's not that there's a shortage of workers. It's maybe it is a shortage of the worker we have in our mind. And so getting out there and really tapping a labor force that, like I said, can be trained is and there's lots of people. JP Morgan and Chase is just provided the United Way with $1 million grant, which we're a part of, to again support that initiative. And so many major organizations are investing in this type of in these types of programs through their way of giving back to the community. And so anyway, so it's great. And then these partnerships, like the United Way, then has partnerships with colleges and secondary schools to teach skills. And so, and all of this is at no cost to the person selected to go into the program. So good opportunity. They're often provided job coaches to help them get through. If you haven't worked a steady type of job, there's definitely some things that there's a learning curve, right? And making sure that you have reliable transportation and knowing the etiquette, the work etiquette do's and don'ts, and things like that. And so there's many people involved in trying to help folks get back into something where they can see themselves as a career.
So if you were the partnerships are key, right? Like you said, Houston's a big place. You need to have those partners in place that probably one can go out and identify. I love what you said, which is there's not a shortage of people. There's maybe a shortage of the type of people you sort of thought you needed, right? And so the idea is, okay, non-traditional. How are we tapping into other populations to grow our workforce and our talent pool? So those partnerships are important. What are some of the other kind of key things that somebody would need, a company would need to have in place, an organization would need to have in place in order to do the kinds of things that you're talking about? What do they need to know about these partnerships or entering into a partnership?
Yeah, well, I would say just reaching out to United Way, Goodwill. Both of those have partnerships. Amazon is another one that really that knows that its warehouse workers are probably only going to be there for 3 years. They have a great program where they provide their workers with college tuition to pursue a particular career, and are looking for organizations to partner with them to say, we'll hire them once they graduate with this certificate. They're looking for things that are short term. And the nice thing about healthcare, there's a lot of things that you can get a degree in or a certification in a year, 18 months, and that pay really well. And so I think major organizations are getting behind the initiative to help their employees also contribute, and know that they're not going to be in these jobs forever.
Let me ask you this too about when you sort of begin and enter into these partnerships, what work do you have to do internally first? Like, I'm thinking about identifying, okay, what are your talent needs? What are the specific skill requirements you have, and being really intentional? And there's a lot of work you got to do on the front end.
Yeah, for us, I think what you have to do is find a job that you hire consistently into, right? And so, so that you can train for that. So that if you're going to work with a school or someone to train these folks, that you're continually hiring into these types of jobs. It should also be a job that probably is a feeder job to other positions in your organization over time. So where else can this person go once they gain these skill sets? Can they move into other positions in your organization and continue moving up? Because they don't want, typically these organizations don't want it that their people stay stagnant. They want to know that there's growth opportunities for them along the road. So, and then the last thing you have to have the partnership with your hiring managers and really helping them understand, having them participate in just knowing what the curriculum is that the person is going to go through. And also that no one comes out of these, even at a college, that can just hit the ground running. And so what are the things you're putting in place when these people come to actually come to their first day of employment? What are the things that are in place that are going to provide them with support? I call it bubble wrapping. How do you bubble wrap people so that they feel supported and safe, and that they're not going to fail?
Yeah. Well, this maybe is a good transition to a question from the audience, which is, how do you all demonstrate upskilling opportunities for those that might come to you as an entry-level worker? I mean, you talked about sort of bubble wrapping, helping them understand what opportunities are there for you. What do you, I don't know, speak to that if you can.
Yeah, so we have a huge learning university, a Memorial Hermann University is what we call it, that has a lot of ways any employee in our system can go ahead and build skills. And it's something we're continuing to evolve. So it is a constant conversation we have. It is helping your managers. I think sometimes they feel like they invest so much time in employees that they don't want to see them leave their department, or that you judge a department based on its turnover, and there's good turnover. And so I think helping having managers realize that they are feeder groups, right? That the goal is not that this person stays in this position more than a certain amount of time, that they're gaining that skill, and that it's actually great that they have moved into another role in the organization, that the organization has retained them, are all positives. But we are continually evolving that conversation of what are the skills necessary to truly upskill that employee. Where are those jobs heading 5 years and beyond from today, so that they're prepared. And things that we're doing is, in a lot of cases we waive the tuition, or the cost of going to get a certification, and we pick that up for that employee to go do that. So we can't do everything in house. We do have to rely on schools and other institutions to help us train our staff.
Sure. Do you partner at all with competitors in the region, with, others in the healthcare industry to sort of, work together around your common pain points?
Partner per se, but we do look for similar type skills, so that if we're working with one of our local colleges on either typically a 2-year program, it's not only our employees that can benefit from it, it's other hospitals can also use that same program to train their staff, because the skill set is pretty standard from healthcare institution to healthcare institution.
Yeah, for sure. How are you guys, and you touch on this a little bit, just thinking about the skills, that you're going to need into the future. Do you all do also sort of that forecasting of the demand over the next 6 months, 1 year, 5 year, 10 years out? What will you need, and beginning to sort of build that now?
We need to get better at that. That is something that workforce planning is, I think, it comes up in almost every conversation we have about anticipating what we need. So we know, we can tell you how many people we anticipate we're going to need to hire, but what that skill set looks like a few years down the road, we haven't gotten good at that yet. And there's so much changing. Just in this past year, we hired, say, a chief digital officer. So we're seeing that digital technology take off. The way, telemedicine, all these ways that you're using digital technology to interact with patients and families, and how are we building those skills for our employees, is something that we do need to talk about more. But we're getting there. It's the dialogue starting. I can't say that we're great at it yet.
Well, I think we have a common friend in the Greater Houston Partnership, and Peter Beard. I bet he can help you.
And that's another, you asked me about how do you get involved in those types of things. Almost all communities have some type of workforce building partnership in major cities. And so if that, I would encourage you to reach out and get on those. It's great to hear from what schools are doing. The schools are looking at the same thing. How do we prepare our students for the future? And that's just another tactic too, just to throw that out, is we have got to change our mindset that we're always going to find experienced people. And so we talked a lot about training, but schools, being in a big city like Houston, we are privy to having a number of great schools and universities within easy access to us. And we have to hire more. We just have to hire more. We'll never fill our nursing openings if we don't hire more nursing students. So that is another big approach of ours, is just not only in nursing, but across the board. Where do we just need to think differently about hiring more new grads and training them?
Yeah. Let me go to one more question from the audience. Actually, we had a couple of them sort of related to veterans and transitioning veterans. Is that a focus for you, a population that you are focused on trying to bring into your
veterans are absolutely part of our strategy, and there's a number of positions that veterans can transition over to in healthcare, and it's a great resource.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for being here and just give you maybe the final word, a word of advice for our audience. I think you had a lot of really great nuggets in here. And I think one of the last ones was this idea that there are partners in the community to touch that are really focused on them. In many of the major communities, they are the Chamber of Commerce. They are the Greater Houston Partnerships of the world that are helping employers within that region to do the work that you are talking about. So would love any sort of final word of advice.
Final word of advice would be, talk to your people, get involved in the community in some form or fashion, talk to people about what the challenges are. I think, for me, the thing is just people don't understand all the opportunities there are in particular industries. And so pointing them in the right direction, helping them to understand that not everything requires a high level of education will often provide that you can on the job training. I think just helps people to understand, like, okay, healthcare. I mean, healthcare is a staple in every town. And so it's a great profession to get into. And it's something that, no matter where you go, if you have healthcare experience, you'll be able to find a job.
Thank you so much, Anne. Thanks for sharing what you guys are doing. I can't imagine a more important industry where we want our best and brightest going into the healthcare industry. And we certainly appreciate
advocates wherever we could get them. Thank you for having me, and I'm happy to speak anytime on this topic.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anne. And now I have the privilege of being joined by Jeff Good, president of the Manja Bene restaurant group in Jackson, Mississippi. Jeff, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you, Cheryl. Pleasure.
So I think the restaurant industry, much like the healthcare industry, but I feel like the restaurant industry might have been, or service sector writ large, might have been the hardest hit over the past year and a half. How have you have a restaurant group, how have you all survived?
Well, it's interesting. So much of what Anne said as we go through our conversation, I think I'm going to echo some of her practices, and I really learned quite a bit from her. That was extraordinary. But when you ask a question comparing us to the healthcare industry during the pandemic and the shutdown, I think it's a opposite negative image of each other. The healthcare industry exploded with the additional challenges and headcount of COVID patients flooding the healthcare system. And the entire reason we had a national shutdown was to flatten the curve and to slow down the proliferation of the COVID virus so we wouldn't have people hospitalized. In order to do that, our industry was shut down. So the difference there is that we were in a position where we had to start by limiting the amount of folks in the dining room, then closing the dining rooms, and then going to takeout only or any type of curbside delivery. And many restaurants just simply had to close down because the economics or the ability to execute that, especially during a full shutdown, wasn't possible. So it was and still is an extraordinarily difficult time for restaurants. Fast forward 18 months from March 18th, which was the day that I wrote a letter to our 184 employees, letting 182 employees go, which we had to completely let my workforce go because we could not support them. We had zero revenue. We had closed dining rooms. My partner and I, we're a restaurant group, but we have 3 restaurants we've created over 27 years since he and I, high school buddies, decided to get into business together. And we had leases and loans and commitments, and we didn't understand coronavirus. We didn't know if we're going to be around, next week. Is this the body snatchers? The bottom line was complete fear and unknown consequences. And all I want to do is take care of my people because I'm in the people business. I wanted to give them a pathway. And so we helped them get on to unemployment because that's exactly what, we best practices prove from paying attention to the federal guidelines. And then we managed our way through the shutdown. And as we started to come back with some opportunities, starting to some feeding programs for emergency management services, COVID testing locations, just learned how to do curbside delivery, started a neighborhood delivery program where we took food out to different neighborhoods and groups. We were able to start adding some people back. And so fast forward 18 months, I am overwhelmed with the amount of business. Now, the Delta variant is going to probably change this now. But if you asked me 2 weeks ago, overwhelming amount of demand. I'm in the South. I'm in Jackson, Mississippi. We're an early open state. Overwhelming amount of demand for people to want to eat, and not enough employees to make that demand. So 18 months ago, I was begging for an opportunity to bring an employee back so I could start building a team again. And now I've got an overwhelming amount of opportunities and not the team to be able to pull it together.
Wow. I mean, that is an incredible story. And I'm sure one that
cry. Come on. It's
all over the country, I bet.
I am every man, and I'm actually very fortunate that we're in a state with temperate weather, and we were an early open state. So our business, if not for a lot of the programs that the chamber advocated for, so PPP, if not for PPP, I wouldn't be here. I would never have been able to go through the process of rehiring people with a fraction of revenue coming in the front door. And facilities, 5,000 to 7,000 square foot facilities I'm paying top dollar for rent, and all of the insurance and everything else that kept going, if not for those stimulus programs. So the same thing for the labor force. A lot of what Ann had to say, I really appreciate her sensitivity to humans, because we are dealing with human beings. Just like I went through the entire Elizabeth Kubler-Ross grief process, I just had to do it really quick to get to acceptance and moving on. But anger and denial and all that, I went through all that. So human beings are doing that. I fired 182 people. Guess what? 182 people got fired by these hands. Yeah. How does that make them feel, especially managers that have been with me for 20 or 22 years? And I had to call them and say, we've got, and they say, are you serious? They say, yeah, we're going to have to let you go. So folks that are sidelined right now and not working, and that is the challenge, is how do you coax some of the folks that are on the sideline back to the workplace? There's a number of reasons why they're sidelined, and some of them are real basic, like a financial stimulus package of extra $300 in unemployment makes it absolutely viable for me to stay at home. And while I'm staying at home, my North Star may change. I may not want to go back into the restaurant business, and so I'm going to change and upskill and look to something else, or start a gig, the whole gig economy. So I think it's really extraordinary, the challenges. So in order for me to be able to coax these folks back, number one, it starts with the brand. Who am I? A tree is known by the fruit it bears. I've got 27 years of history as a small business person in a small community. I'm the opposite of Houston. We have 172,000 people in Jackson, Mississippi, 500,000 in the metro area. So I'm what's become a big fish in a small pond. So I'm known, and our businesses are known. So I'm able to leverage off of that. So I would strongly suggest that any business that has a great name for itself, and it's a truthful and not a created, manufactured, marketing-driven thing. If you really are who you are, play that card. So folks know that we're a great place to work. They know that we care about our customers, we care about our employees, we serve real food. Then you got to tout it. So I came up with, for the first time ever, brochures. And these brochures are representative of the people in my business. And when I say representative, I really think it's important. I'm a middle-aged, middle-class white American. And it is really important that I reflect in the way I present myself and our businesses, the truth behind the real, the whole canvas of color and personalities that work with me. And so we have these brochures, and how do people get these? Well, when I'm working the dining room, I'm going door to door at the dining room tables, and I'm looking at the young kid in high school, or I'm looking at the 24-year-old, and I'm saying, so what are you doing this weekend? And if they're interested in
come to my house, I have a 17-year-old upstairs.
Send him or her over. And if I'm talking to a parent, I have a chance right there while they're eating our product and enjoying our hospitality, and say, I'm a place that you can trust me with your kid. I'm going to teach them how to do this. This is how we do things. And so, I really guerrilla marketing, where we just went straight into the opportunity we had in front of us. We had the opportunity to move our Salamukis. So we were in one location for 14 years. Our lease was coming up. Worst time ever to do it. But we took the opportunity to find a new location. And when we moved, we doubled our size and revenue from where we were. That meant we needed to double at least our staff, and we had to do that before we opened. So I held a very simple carnival. We used social media and email marketing as the way to get it out. I immediately got the news stations curious because it was topical. So before the carnival, we had 2 news stations pick up the story, and we're able to have them on site. So again, a tip for all of my business folks out there, whether you're an owner or a key manager, when the press calls and they want to interview you, really think about the optics of how you want to do it. This Zoom thing is great. You get them in front of your business with the best picture of your business in back of you, the thing you want to portray to the world. Do that. And so I get them over to the construction site. I show them there's an exciting place. I say we're going to have a hiring carnival on this day, and anybody who comes is going to get a free scoop of ice cream. And you hold the ice cream cup up, and you build that excitement. And you say, then we're going to give a $20 gift card to our restaurants to anybody who sits for an interview. And then if we hire you, we're going to give you a $200 signing bonus at 90 days. Yes, we had to do that to entice folks out. We got about 45 people to come to this 2.5-hour carnival, and we hired, made about 23 offers and hired 14 people. And this Friday is payday. And this Friday is the final round of payouts. And I've got 20 people that from, the carnival was the first set. We hired more people, 20 folks receiving their 90-day $200 bonus. And I just sent a reply all email to my management team and said, fantastic, best news ever. I can't wait to cut those checks, because those young folks and middle-aged folks that came to work with us came when we needed them, and we need to honor them and what they've done. So I just really think that we as employers, being sensitive to the humanness of our employees, and I'm in an industry that has a very interesting labor, wage, and work relationship. We have extremely flexible hours, extremely different schedules, and different pay rates based on whether you're kitchen or front house, and tips and the like. And so we just got to really be open to rethinking that and what our base wages are and how we engage people.
So much.
That's a lot. I apologize.
It's a lot. No, it's great. I love hearing your obvious passion for what you do and for your people and for your business. You referenced the federal unemployment program and the $300, and that has ended in Mississippi. Have you seen a difference yet, or have Mississippi writ large begun to see changes in the workforce as a result?
I was excited for this moment because I was saying to myself, we're about 30 days out from our suspension of the $300, and we're 2.5 weeks out from July 1, and the beginning of every month is rent's due and bills are due. I really thought that once we got through the 4th of July holiday, we'd see a big upswing in applications. We have not. Now I'm seeing more. So there's no doubt that more folks are coming back. Was it huge? And of course, I'm just a microcosm. I don't see it as being huge at this point. And watching the local news and reading the local paper, I'm seeing the same narrative. It's not huge. I do think that as each week clicks by, it will firm it up. I do believe our biggest challenge right now is Delta variant. And I have, for 4 weeks, been incenting my team. On August the 1st, we're having a drawing for anyone who got vaccinated. I started this on June the 15th. I'm giving away 2 plane tickets anywhere in the lower 48, $300 cash, $500 cash, and a 3-night stay at a hotel for first prize. Night in New Orleans, $300 for the second prize, $200 cash for third prize. I have a population base of roughly 168, 170 employees. Our vaccination rate in Mississippi is about 31%. I'm assuming I've got about 110 that aren't vaccinated. So far I've received 12 folks have gotten vaccinated through my focus on this. And that included me bringing 2 healthcare professionals through each of the restaurants last week before shift, giving these lovely ladies the opportunity to present their belief system and the importance of the vaccine and speak to the community of my employees. I'm finding a lot of young folks that are not interested because they're afraid of needles. They don't know what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to be a good employer by providing facts and not bullying. But
Mhm.
if we have that challenge, that's going to be a challenge for me running a business again. It's going to be a challenge for me getting customers in, and it's going to be a challenge for employees to come back to work, because a certain segment of the population is still concerned about getting into a retail customer-facing business when there's a pandemic going on. So I really would urge all of us that if we are sitting on the fence ourselves and we're employers, I really urge you to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself what you're doing when you say that. And this is the safest vaccine that it's kind of a 10-year-old platform. I just can't see why we wouldn't want to do that.
Well, you're doing all the right things, and certainly all the things that we are trying to encourage with our efforts here at the Chamber as well. We've got a question coming in from the audience. What's the future of the industry, of the restaurant industry? More hybrid takeout, dine-in? You referenced some of these things and big shifts you had to make over the past 18 months. Do you think those things will stay? And how does that impact hiring and your strategies?
I was having a mental health day on Sunday, and I played a round of golf, and I played with a young man who I've met a few times before. And he was very excited, telling me about when it was a hot day and he was hungry. And he says, I can't wait to go to Taco Bell after this because I can walk right in and I can order on the kiosk. I don't need to talk to anybody. They get my order right because I'm keying in myself, and I can get in and out quickly. Self-service automation is the wave of the future. Online ordering from your phone with pickup. So it's pre-order, prepay. You don't have to talk to anybody. Coffee shops where you order your coffee and you run in and it's sitting on a shelf with your name on it. The ability to go into a restaurant and put yourself on the wait list on yourself, by yourself without talking to a host, just by having a kiosk. These are all things we're seeing in our business. And then on the other end, and you see the weird, videos on social media, the robots delivering the drinks to a table, or the, Mr. Flippy, the hamburger flipper. And, and people say it's the wave of the future. I don't know about all that. I mean, I know what it takes to deliver a set of drinks to a table. And, there's a lot of randomness going from the bar to the table, especially with kids running around. I don't see that Mr. Robot is going to be very effective at that. And somebody's still got to load it on his tray. So I think the human element's always going to be there. And I think it's really important that we as employers really always remember the preciousness of the time that someone gives you, especially as a small businessman, where this thing I've created all came out of my head. And through raising capital and doing all the things that business people have to do, I was able to bring it into the world and impact the world in a positive way. But the only way I do that is through the efforts of the human beings that choose to do that with me for a wage. So, I mean, I couldn't even imagine discussing the idea of robotics in front of an employee right now. I think that would be a chilling effect. I think it'd be very scary. But I know a lot of industries have done that, especially in warehousing and the like, and manufacturing, and that's a great place to upskill. But if I start talking about bringing in Mr. Flippy, the hamburger flipper, that's not a good idea.
Yeah. Well, and you said, you overwhelming amount of business now, right? Like you can't fill the amount of business you have. And I have to believe that is partially because people are desperate to come to restaurants again.
For divertisement. We just want the social side of things.
You want that social thing. Yeah. So I get I don't necessarily want to have to talk to somebody and get my coffee, but I still want to go to a restaurant and have community. And especially in a small town, it's where you see your neighbors and your friends.
Well, think about the first time that you had an experience post shutdown when you went into a group, and especially I think as we were vaccinated, I well remember the first party I went to, and it was just this is just really amazing. This is and the lack of fear, or when I went to the grocery store for the first time and I didn't have my mask on. And I was just this is really, and somebody coughed around me, and I kind of went, well, I'm a hypochondriac anyway, I'll move away. but I wasn't freaking out. Right. So there we go.
Well, I can't thank you enough. And I'm excited to get back on planes, and I want to put Jackson, Mississippi on the place to go list. And I'm going to hit up Bravo or Broad Street or Salad.
We're the city with soul. Come and see us. We're a great little town.
I can't wait. Thank you so much, Jeff. Really appreciated talking to you.
Thank you.
Now, lastly, but certainly not least, we have the pleasure of speaking with a long-standing friend, both to the Chamber and the Chamber Foundation, Todd Sanders, the CEO and president of the Greater Phoenix Chamber. Hey, Todd.
How are you?
Not so long ago, we did some research and we found that 90% of state and local chambers of commerce say worker shortages are holding back their economies. And so I really am so excited for you to be here, and I wanted to dig into this with you. I always learn so much talking to you. So thank you. So Greater Phoenix Chamber obviously represents companies of all sizes and sectors in the Phoenix area. What are you all seeing from your economic dashboard as you're looking to continued recovery?
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me. A great panel, or a great speaker. I thought Jeff did a great job kind of talking about things from sort of what's happening on the ground floor. But it's been interesting clearly throughout this period of time that we're all looking at. We do have an economic dashboard. I think it shows kind of what we're seeing nationally. What I chose to do today, though, is something a little bit different. We have a consumer confidence index for Arizona that we started right when this got started. And so I want to give you guys a sneak peek. These numbers aren't out yet in Arizona. They're not going to be out for probably another week. But I thought, well, when Cheryl calls, you come up with some good stuff. So I'm going to share that with you. So I'm going to go to economic confidence sort of in current conditions and to give you a kind of a sense of what's happening. So current confidence increased by 2.8 points from Q4 of last year to Q1 of 2021. Pretty good. Now, the telling part is that consumer confidence increased by 7.4 points from Q1 to Q2 of this year. So a remarkable increase in just that period of time. Now, looking at the future, we're seeing in Q2, obviously we just passed, we saw a 10.5% growth over Q1 in optimism about business conditions in the year ahead. And the share of consumers who are expecting good economic conditions in the next 5 years increased also in the last quarter by 3.9%. So a nice uptick there. We also look at generational confidence, really interesting. Gen X confidence grew by 12.43 points, the most among all generational groups. But what was interesting to me, while Gen X had the largest quarterly increase, the most optimistic generation, Gen Z. So who knew? Interesting stats there. Now, we look at income brackets as well. Probably won't surprise you that confidence rose among all income brackets in Q2, but consumers making more than $100,000 saw the largest growth in terms of confidence at 9.3 points, followed by those making under $50,000 a year. And then in between, sort of the sandwich there, the folks that make between 50 and 100 had the lowest confidence in the second period, in the second quarter. I will say, though, that that first and second, there's just about a 1/10 of a point difference there. But interesting stats there. And then, as I mentioned, our confidence index is linked to the University of Michigan's index, which is the national index. We ask a lot of the same questions. So we like to compare ourselves to the rest of the country. And by and large, at least in Q2, we're in Arizona seem to be a little bit less optimistic than the rest of the country. We tended to follow the country through February, then split in June, where the country kind of went up by 1.2 points and we went down by 2.9. So obviously we aren't ringing the alarm bells yet. It's not a trend. It's one quarter, but it's something for us to look at. We'll be following those numbers closely. But I think this kind of speaks to the fact that the economy really is starting to pick up steam and people are feeling it.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to ask you, what do you attribute that sort of huge jump between 1 and 2, Q1 and Q2? People are getting back. States, it's feeling that we've overcome the pandemic. I know your governor has put in place some efforts to incentivize workers and with back to work, Arizona back to work in May. What are you seeing as a result of that? Do you think that's related to any of this?
Yeah, no, really good question. And I do think that the vaccine changed everything. Like you mentioned, I know the U.S. Chamber's done a tremendous amount on that. I think as we started to see vaccination rates go up, we started to see people go out and start to spend money and contribute to the economy. But as Jeff was mentioning, certainly some sluggishness as far as people coming back to the workforce or reevaluating what they wanted to do. And I'll give our governor some credit here. We looked at, I guess they looked at this problem and announced this program in May. And essentially the idea was to help people transition from unemployment to return to work. And this, the idea that we're going to decouple from the federal program and then incentivize people to come back to work. And there are three parts to it. There's a return to work part. And that is, if you're coming into a job full time, once you've been there and completed 320 hours, you're eligible for $2,000 from the state. Part-time workers, 160 hours and $1,000. Now, a few things. You've had to have been on unemployment. You can't just go on unemployment and get the dollars, but this is really aimed at getting people back to work. Yeah. And it is on a first come, first served basis. The other part of this is childcare. Certainly childcare is a challenge. And so if you are on unemployment assistance, you're eligible for this. And if you have children under 13 years old, you can apply. You have to make under a certain amount of money. I think it's $52,000 a year, but certainly that's an important part of it. And then finally, some of the work that we're doing along with you is workforce. So helping people get reskilled. Again, if you're a part of the folks that were unemployed, the state's going to give the community colleges about $7.5 million for scholarships to get people back in to retrain and get back into work, and also $6 million for GED assistance. So I think it was a well-rounded package, along with sort of the idea that we're getting people vaccinated.
Wow. So I just want to ask you one question, and you can decline to answer if you want, but I'm curious about this $7.5 million to community colleges. How are you guys, or are you guys? How are you all? I mean, you guys have been such amazing partners of ours, but are just doing amazing work in Phoenix to really tackle the skills issue and the workforce shortages. You have been for years. How are you making sure that money that goes to community colleges to get people training is actually training people for things that your member companies have, the jobs that your member companies have? We don't just want this, we don't want people getting education and training for things that are not relevant.
No, absolutely. Basket weaving is probably not going to make you a lot of money. I'll give a lot of credit to you all. I think you really helped us sort of build our program out. And I think now that we have had that infrastructure in place and a very strong relationship with our community college system. So as we have been looking at areas of the economy like financial services, like healthcare, like advanced manufacturing. We already have those programs in place and the infrastructure in place. The demand, I think, is coming to the community college system. And as we're talking to people out there and to employers, we were able to make those matches. And so I'm pretty confident that those dollars are really going to go to the right place. And I'll give a lot of credit also to Jennifer Meller, who leads this program, developed a very strong partnership with our community college system, as well as our K-12 system. As those folks are coming out of that, out of the high school system, they're able to get into some really attractive career options.
Well, it's one of the reasons why we wanted to have you here, was really to talk a little bit about the efforts of the state and obviously your efforts as well, because I think states are hungry to hear what their peers are doing and who has made some interesting investments. And certainly we've touted what you guys are doing in Arizona as a great example. So I appreciate you talking about that. How has there been any additional sort of public-private efforts that you can speak to just coming out of the pandemic, or as the governor's been making these additional efforts? How is the private sector, how is the business community engaging there? Right.
Well, I mean, first, and I'll go back to the governor's plan. I think the general consensus is that was the right direction with first step. The business community, as you can imagine, is ready to hire folks. I'll reference the ABI data as an example of why there's so much demand in the economy. A few things happened this session. We worked with the legislature and the governor on a tax reduction measure, which is going to streamline taxes, and it's going to protect small business from a pretty significant tax increase. So I think that's important. It's also going to redefine small business income to make sure that they don't get roped into areas that would not be appropriate for small business and cause them harm. The other part, I think, that we've been working on a lot with the cities and the county and some of the state is looking to partner with them on the American Rescue Plan dollars. A little bit complicated given the fact that the guidance is either is not necessarily as comprehensive as it should be in some areas, or it's too narrow. So I think there are a lot of areas where we could do more, and I think there are a lot of organizations on the nonprofit side that can, I think, leverage these dollars to do work that will help the economy continue to grow. But that's an area where I think we're working with our partners to continue that, and hopefully to get, as new dollars come in, additional guidance that will allow us to expand how those dollars are spent.
So I was thinking about the confidence metrics that you started with, and is there an ability, or have you thought about, or are you thinking about the various industries that are maybe have been hurt the most during this pandemic, or confidence in those industries coming back? Or I'm just curious about what is sort of suffering the most in Arizona, and is that still the case, or is everybody sort of coming out of this truly challenging time?
Sure. No, and I appreciate the question. I think clearly there's economic suffering, and then there's other, and obviously a lot of folks suffered tremendously. On the economic side, we certainly do have a strong tourism industry that was decimated. And so when the numbers come out, and I have the full numbers, I'll send them to you, because we do include that. We are starting to see a nice uptick in travel. Clearly, the question is going to be what's going to happen to business travel. I think to your earlier point about restaurants, what is business travel going to look like in the future? Are we all going to want to get on a plane and go to DC? I hope so, to visit with the U.S. Chamber, but that remains to be seen. Those are some of the things we're looking at. And certainly the restaurant industry was hit very, very hard. We're able to redirect a little bit, but now it's all about how they can meet the demand that's out there. And to our earlier point, the point that was being made by Jeff, that, how can you get people in the door to make sure that we have the manpower necessary to make that sector viable again? So those two sectors are really critical. Others, the larger businesses, I think, fared probably better. Retail facing businesses, I think, certainly struggled, and that's not, I don't think, particular to Arizona. I think that's national, but certainly with the larger companies, I think they're now thinking about how they're going to come back to work. What does that look like? And so it's a little bit different for them.
Are you hearing it sort of on the daily basis? I know that, we hear it from members of the U.S. Chamber. I suspect you hear it as members of the Phoenix Chamber. We can't find workers, right? And obviously this is, part of the governor's effort to incent people back into the workforce. Do you hear it as often as we do from your member companies? And if so, has anybody kind of cracked the code or found any interesting or innovative hiring strategies that you know of?
Well, it's a good question. I think that the governor's program really helped alleviate some of that. I can tell you just anecdotally, my nephew in Tempe at Arizona State thought it would be very easy to go get a job serving, and he's been looking for about 2 weeks, and has. And I think he's a good qualified candidate, but it's been a little tough. And I think there were one particular industry or one particular restaurant, I think it was 4 days worth of interviews, and he never got a call back. So I'm thinking that it's starting to turn a little bit. But I think probably companies are using a little bit of, they're trying different things to bring people in, but I think it's starting to have the right effect, and hopefully we're getting people back to work and the economy restarted.
Yeah. Well, I hope that you guys, and I know this was, just these changes or these policy changes, the unemployment benefits and that kind of thing are more recent in Arizona. So I'll be anxious to see, whether you see some real results as you get a little bit of time post those changes. I really appreciate you being here, Todd, and I would love if you would share that consumer confidence information with us. I know that folks would be interested to see it. Do you have any, advice for other chambers, other states who might be looking at, what policy changes can we make? How can the business community, how can a chamber really play an important role in tackling this worker shortage?
Well, I do. I mean, I mentioned it earlier, and I'm so thankful that we decided to engage with you all, and we had a very solid foundation for our workforce development efforts, so that when we went into this, we had something really strong to rely on as we started to come out of it. So I would say that's one thing that I would suggest. The other thing is, what we did is we really mixed up we took our chamber and created sort of rapid response teams of people that didn't normally do the kind of work that we were asking them to do. We got some really interesting results from people that generally don't work in these areas, and it actually made a really big difference. So I think really utilize your folks in ways that they haven't been used before. Leverage the U.S. chambers, all the things that you all have to offer, and don't forget to listen to your members.
Well, thank you for that, Todd, for that little plug. That wasn't exactly what I wasn't setting you up for that, but I appreciate it. And I would say, it's work that, I'm not surprised that Phoenix is in a decent position right now, right? Because you did do the hard work for years in advance of really forecasting what you need and managing your talent pipeline. You had an infrastructure in place that allowed you to support your membership. So we appreciate you, and certainly appreciate you for being here today. Thanks so much, Todd.
Well, I appreciate it. And the compliment is absolutely correct. I mean, we were doing it before it was sexy, and now it's sexy, but we have a real infrastructure to do the work, and it's necessary. And so we're proud to be in that position. So thank you.
Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate certainly all of our speakers today, Anne and Jeff and Todd. They're all obviously, as you can see, making a positive difference, each of them, through their organizations, in their communities, really tackling this worker shortage. And hopefully we brought a few ideas, some solutions. I look forward to our next conversation, which will be on August 17th. Our next installment of Talent Forward. I hope all of you will join us then. Thanks so much for being here this afternoon.